Have you ever heard of the greatest pirate in history? No, it's not Blackbeard, it's not Jack Sparrow, or a man for that matter. The true ruler of the seas was a woman. And if you've never heard that name before, you might be missing out on one of the sharpest, most dangerous, and most daring minds in human history. In fact, are you subscribed to this channel? If you're not, take advantage now, because what you'll discover here won't appear in school books or Disney movies. The curious thing is that Zheng Yisao began her life ignored by society. A woman, poor, without nobility, without power. But she understood something that many leaders still don't today. The game isn't about where you start, it's about how you change the rules. And she changed everything. While empires thought they were untouchable, she grew outside the system, organized a pirate army, and created her own empire. And best of all, without ever losing her head. Literally, throughout this video, you'll delve into a story that blends blood, strategy, power, and reinvention. You'll understand how a former prostitute became the queen of over 70,000 pirates, faced entire empires, emerged unscathed, and even died rich. It's like the story your grandmother would tell you if she were a military strategist living on the high seas. So comment below if you've heard of Zheng Yisao, like this content so it reaches more people, and get ready, because things are about to change. Few people imagine that the most feared figure in 19th century Asian seas began her life in a place many overlooked, a floating brothel in Canton. Before she commanded a gigantic fleet, Zheng Yisao was just a young woman trying to survive where she could. Life taught her early on that the world was not kind to those born poor and female. But as they say, those who have no tide swim against the current. And that's exactly what she did. She turned disadvantage into strategy, invisibility into power. While many women of her time were silenced, she learned to listen, not out of respect, but for survival. She overheard merchants' conversations, sailors' tricks, and even the weaknesses of the powerful who frequented the brothel. Every detail became a chess piece in her mind. She might not have had books in her hands, but she collected information like someone building a secret empire. And there, hidden beneath the red lights of a ship, she began to shape the queen she would become. This story could easily be mistaken for fiction if it weren't documented by chroniclers and officials of the time. But do you know what's most curious? There's a silent lesson here. Success doesn't always come from where we expect it. Sometimes it springs from what others despise. And the way Zheng used what she had at her disposal takes us straight to the moment her life changes course, and fate brings her face to face with a legendary pirate. When Zheng Yi crossed paths with Zheng Yisao, he perhaps didn't imagine he was sealing a pact with someone far more cunning than himself. Their marriage wasn't just an unlikely romance, it was a strategic move, worthy of those who understand that love can sometimes also be an alliance of power. He was a feared pirate, commander of the mighty Red Flag fleet. She was a woman with a thirst for influence, and a mind sharp as a marauder's sword. Together they would be unstoppable. But Zheng Yisao wasn't content with being the decorative wife of an influential pirate. She wanted to be at the helm, not just on deck. She began participating in decisions, organizing routes, and negotiating with other captains. This was at a time when women could barely voice their opinions at home, let alone in a fleet with thousands of armed men. Imagine the level of political and mental skill she had to develop to be heard there. This isn't learned from a manual. It's built by living and by mastering silence before mastering words. This marriage, more than a romantic union, was the seed of a naval transformation that would mark the China Seas. Zheng Yi realized he had married a strategist, not just a woman, and when the storm of life descended upon the fleet, a tragedy that would change everything, she did not go down with the ship. On the contrary, she took the helm into her own hands and turned the tide in her favor. Zheng Yi's death in 1807 was a blow that could have destabilized the entire fleet's organization. After all, without its leader, chaos was an imminent threat. But it was then that Zheng Yisao showed the world that she wasn't just the heir to a pirate empire, she was the very force behind it. Taking command of over 70,000 men in a male-dominated world driven by brute force and fear was no easy task. And yet she not only assumed the role, but commanded respect. Rather than trying to dominate by shouting, she played wisely. She forged alliances, secured political support within the Confederation, and continued business with a coolness worthy of an emperor. For those who believe leadership comes from imposed authority, Zheng Yisao teaches that true power comes from established influence. She knew who to reward, who to threaten, and most importantly, who to keep close. As in any modern organization, knowing who to ally with makes all the difference, whether on a corporate board or on the high seas. She became Supreme Commander of the Red Flag Confederation, one of the largest and most organized pirate groups in history. And the curious thing is, it wasn't by luck or accident. It was by strategy, charisma, and courage. At that moment, the story was no longer about a widow who took her husband's place. It was about a woman who, against all odds, placed herself at the top of the world. And this was just the beginning of the revolution she would bring to the ocean of politics and piracy. Cheng Dustan was more than Zheng Yi's protege. He was like an adopted son, forged in the art of piracy from a young age. After Zheng Yi's death, many expected him to take over. But Zheng Yisao, with her sharp mind, saw further. She saw Cheng not as a threat, but as an asset. And she did the unexpected. She turned her son into a partner, and later, a husband. In a power play, few moves are as bold as this. This alliance was strategic in every sense. By joining forces with Cheng Dustan, Zheng Yisao shielded her leadership from other captains, strengthened control over the fleet, and still maintained the connection to the legacy of her former leader. It was as if she said, "I honor the past, but I am in command of the present." And this applies to any leadership scenario today. When we want to assume a prominent position, we must show respect for history, but have the courage to rewrite it. More than a personal relationship, this union solidified her authority over a group of men who respected Cheng but obeyed Zheng Yisao. The balance of this relationship was almost choreographed, a powerful example of how alliances, when well formed, can bridge the gap between chaos and absolute dominance. And it was from there that Zheng Yisao began to devise something even greater, a true pirate constitution, one that would bring order to the seas and demonstrate that she was more than a commander. She was the queen of rules. Amidst the chaos of the ocean, where law was the most heavily loaded cannon, Zheng Yisao did something few would dare imagine. He established order. He created a code of conduct for his fleet. And it wasn't just any loose rule, it was practically a naval constitution. Rape, punishment by execution. Internal theft, death or mutilation. Desertion? Forget it. The message was clear. Either they sailed together, or they would sink alone. This transformed a band of plunderers into a quasi-military force. This code, despite its harshness, brought a rare discipline to the pirate world. It wasn't just about morality, but also strategy. Zheng understood that organized men are more lethal than men on the loose. She enforced justice among her own, at a time when even governments failed in this role. And curiously enough, how many companies today struggle with the same struggle to establish an organizational culture? Zheng did it with power-hungry pirates. More than imposing rules, she created a collective identity. Her pirates weren't just criminals, they were members of an order. This generated loyalty, respect, and above all, a sense of belonging. Anyone building any team, whether digital, physical, or at sea, can learn from this. Clear rules, firm leadership, and a common purpose. And it was precisely with this solid foundation that Zheng Yisao was able to take the next step, conquering the South China Sea like no one else had done before. When we talk about ruling the seas, many people think of epic films or exaggerated stories. But Zheng Yisao didn't need a Hollywood script. She truly controlled the South China Sea. Her vessels patrolled trade routes between Macau, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong, with greater authority than any navy of the time. She collected taxes from coastal villages, set tariffs, and decided who could and could not sail. She was, quite literally, a floating emperor. Her influence was so great that even Chinese merchants and nobles preferred to trade with Zheng than facing imperial bureaucracy. And here's the trick. She understood that whoever controls the path, controls the destiny. This applies to the sea, the internet, or your own life. Want to be a reference? Master the channels that connect you to the world. Zheng Yisao mastered the seas, but you can master the algorithm, the data, or even your personal communication. The impact of this was so great that her fleet became a veritable parallel state. It had a hierarchy, its own economy, and a military force that would make empires tremble. This wasn't the result of luck, but of brutally intelligent strategic thinking. But where there's power, there are also watchful eyes, silent enemies, and lurking threats. And it was in this scenario that she found herself face to face with powers that would do anything to topple her from her salty throne. Just imagine a woman leading pirates, facing no less than 3 naval powers, the Qin dynasty, Portugal, and Great Britain. And the most surprising thing, she not only resisted, she came out on top. While the empires came with arrogance and warships, Zheng Yisao responded with unpredictable tactics, quick alliances, and an absurd knowledge of the maritime territory. It was as if they were playing chess, and she was always 3 moves ahead. While Europeans underestimated another Asian pirate, she mapped out their strategies, captured ships, and left messages as if marking her territory. The desperate Qing dynasty even offered bounties on her head, and failed. Portugal and England sent entire fleets, which returned humiliated. This shows one thing: true power lies not in the size of the force, but in the clarity of the strategy. And she knew how to use every advantage to her advantage, even the prejudice against her. The curious thing is that, even in the face of these colossal threats, Zheng Yisao didn't lose control. On the contrary, she further cemented her reputation as an unbeatable leader. And let's be honest, isn't that a thing we have a lot of these days? Sometimes we face giants, markets, crises, competition, and we only win if we know how to play outside the box. But not every battle is won in war. Some are won at the negotiating table. And that's exactly where she surprised us once again. Zheng Yisao didn't conquer empires with courage alone. She conquered them with tactical innovation. While her enemies used standard naval formations, she applied maritime guerrilla strategies. Ambushes in straits, communication via colored flags, real-time coordination between squadrons. It was like watching a startup disrupting a traditional industry. It simply broke the game and created new rules. And surprisingly, it did so with smaller but much more agile boats. She also knew how to play on her opponent's psyche. She left cooperative villages intact and destroyed those that resisted, building a reputation that generated fear even before the first shot was fired. A contemporary example: it's like brands that win not through product, but through perception, pure branding. Zheng mastered this art long before it had a name. The message was clear: she didn't need to use brute force all the time. She just needed to make people believe she was invincible. Furthermore, she forged temporary alliances with other pirate fleets like the Black Flag, just to win specific battles. This demonstrates a rare emotional intelligence, knowing when to join forces, even with former rivals. And herein lies the hidden lesson: a true strategist doesn't fight every war alone. He chooses his battles and his allies. And it was with this mindset that Zheng Yisao paved the way for one of the boldest and most unexpected moves of his career. No empire is built without leaving a trail of blood, and Zheng Yisao was no exception. Her leadership, though strategic, was marked by brutal punishments. Pirates who broke the rules were beheaded, mutilated, or thrown overboard as a warning. Her reputation for justice came with a reputation for cruelty. But before judging, it's important to understand the context. She commanded thousands of armed men in an environment where any hesitation could be interpreted as weakness. Her moral code was not that of the nobility or the people, it was that of the sea. And at sea, those who hesitate sink. Zheng Yisao understood that controlled fear could be a tool for order. It's like modern companies that operate with toxic cultures disguised as high performance. Unattainable goals, veiled pressure, symbolic punishment. The difference is that she didn't disguise it. She was direct, clear, and relentless. And this stance divided opinions, but unified the fleet. Controversial as it was, her severity maintained order where chaos reigned. And between us, can we maintain discipline today without that kind of steady hand? Perhaps the answer lies in balance, knowing when to be firm, when to listen. Zheng used both, but when the knife needed to fall, she didn't tremble. And it was this coolness that helped transform the floating empire into something so stable that even governments began to negotiate rather than fight. After years of reigning over the seas, Zheng Yisao did the unthinkable. She surrendered, but wait, it wasn't defeat, it was negotiation. In 1810, with military pressure mounting and allies dwindling, she made a brilliant decision. She used her fame as a bargaining chip. Instead of being hunted to the bitter end, she went to the Qing government, head held high, and negotiated an amnesty on terms only someone very audacious would have the courage to propose. And she succeeded. It was that simple. Not only did she escape unharmed, she secured pardons for thousands of pirates under her command. No one was executed. She kept her fortune. And as if that weren't enough, her husband, Chung Chai, even earned an official government position. It's the equivalent of a dangerous hacker becoming a digital security consultant, only with cannons and ships on their resume. Xing Ye Sao understood the timing of surrender. Knowing when to stop is an art. And she mastered it to the end. This move was as unexpected as it was brilliant. Turning a pirate empire into a peace treaty without further bloodshed was her last great masterstroke. And here's the catch for you. Perhaps at war, aren't you also winning too many battles and forgetting that you can simply negotiate victory? Her story shows that stopping isn't always giving up. Sometimes it's a sign you've already won. And now her life would take an unexpected new turn. Jing Yi Sao could have disappeared from history after leaving the seas. But no, she reappeared on dry land in a way few expected. She became a businesswoman. Yes, the greatest pirate in history traded cannons for gambling dens in Canton, and more than making money, she won the game of time. While her former enemies aged under the rigidity of the system, Zheng reinvented herself, something many people even today still struggle to do. She understood that true power is that which survives retirement. Her name still commanded respect, even off the deck, and so, she used what she learned at sea, negotiation, reading people, calculating risk to dominate another realm, finance and influence. It's like an executive who leaves a multinational company to start their own business, only with 1,000 stories of real battles under their belt. The essence was the same: control, vision, and boldness. Her transition wasn't just geographic, it was one of identity, from pirate to matriarch, from auteur to respected figure. And this turning point teaches us something powerful. The past doesn't have to define your future. You can change course, even after navigating dark waters. The hardest part, finding the courage to do it. Zheng had it, and while many wondered where she was already paving the way for the next chapter of her silent legend. Zheng Yi Sao wasn't just a pirate, she was a woman who tore up the gender maps of her time. While the world was saying this is no place for women, she was creating her own geography of power. She led tens of thousands of men, confronted empires, created laws, and still retired wealthy and in peace. What other 19th century woman can say that? None, and that's why her legacy extends far beyond the seas. It resonates as a symbol of strength, autonomy, and strategy. She proved that authority has no gender, it has posture. Her leadership was so imposing that scholars still wonder how she managed to command a fleet of that size without being betrayed. The answer: respect built with intelligence. And this lesson applies to everyone. It's not about being male or female, young or experienced. It's about understanding how to inspire, organize, and guide. Zhang did this better than many generals with diplomas and medals on their chests. More than 2 centuries later, her name continues to be studied, cited, and even represented in films and series. And this is no coincidence. It's because every time someone dares to challenge the obvious, break patterns, and rewrite their own history, a spark of Zheng Yi Sao is ignited. So, if you've ever felt like you have no place, that you're out of the game, that you were born in the wrong place or time, remember her, because sometimes all you need is a tide and the courage to sail against it. When we think of pirates, Western imagination immediately conjures up names like Blackbeard, Calico Jack, or even Jack Sparrow, influenced by cinema. But the curious thing is that, in terms of numbers, none of them comes close to the grandeur of Zheng Yi Sao. While the pirates of the Caribbean commanded a few hundred men, Zheng led over 70,000. It's like comparing a local gang to an entire army. The scale of her operation was the stuff of empire, not banditry. While Blackbeard terrorized the US East Coast for a few short years, Zheng Yi Sao reigned over crucial Asian trade routes for nearly a decade. And what makes this even more impressive is that she did all this as a woman in a deeply patriarchal Confucian society. She didn't rely on exaggerated legends. Her exploits were documented even by her enemies, and that speaks volumes about the real impact she made. It wasn't fame, it was dominance. Comparing her to Western luminaries is like comparing a marathon to a 100-meter dash. While they became myths, she became a system, and this difference changes everything. Zheng wasn't just a rebellious figure, she was an architect of power, a reminder that what truly impresses isn't the momentary explosion, but the ability to sustain an empire over time. And speaking of time, even with all this, there are still those who don't even know she exists. Despite her grandeur, Jin Yi Sao remains a hidden gem of history, but she's slowly being rediscovered. Her figure inspired characters like Madame Ching in Pirates of the Caribbean, on Stranger Tides, and has also appeared in comics, games, and Asian productions. And no wonder, her life has all the makings of an epic script. She's the kind of character that would make any screenwriter say, "This is too unreal to be true." But it's true, every comma. What's most striking about her portrayals is that, unlike other romanticized pirates, Zheng Yi Sao is portrayed with imposingness, intelligence, and real power. She wasn't just the strong woman, she was the cool strategist, the respected commander, the leader who imposed order with firm eyes and without raising her voice. And this speaks volumes about the kind of presence she still wields. She doesn't need to shout because her story already resonates on its own. And it's funny to think that today, while many seek to stand out on social media with filters and catchphrases, Zheng achieved her historic virality without ever posting a photo. This proves that true impact depends not only on visibility, but also on substance. And if cinema and television are rediscovering Zheng Yi Sao now, it's because the modern world is beginning to understand that female protagonism has always existed. It was just poorly portrayed. And all that's missing is the conclusion to this saga. Zheng Yi Sao lived intensely, but died quietly, without battles, without arrests, without public glory. She simply departed around 1844 at her home in Guangzhou as a respected lady, a business owner with a history no empire could erase. She died of natural causes at 68 or 69, which, let's face it, is almost a miracle considering all she experienced. And this alone shows how well she overcame time. Few leaders die peacefully after facing wars, betrayals, and empires. Most end up imprisoned, exiled, or forgotten. But Zheng Yi Sao did differently. She left the scene without losing her throne. Her memory wasn't trapped in dusty books. She became a legend that doesn't rely on fantasy, because reality was more incredible than any fiction. And this teaches one of history's greatest lessons. True power is that which survives its absence. Today, as her name resurfaces, it's as if time has bent to pay tribute. While many kings and emperors have disappeared from the record, Zheng remains. Not because she was the cruelest, the richest, or the most beautiful, but because she was the most audacious. The woman who began in a floating brothel and ended up as queen of the seas, and perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest of all sovereigns the world has ever seen. So, what would you do if you had the power to rewrite your story like Zheng Yi Sao did? You may not command a fleet of pirates, but you certainly face storms every day at work, in life, in your decisions. The question is, are you steering your own ship, or are you just drifting? Because the truth is simple and brutal. Either you take the helm, or someone else will sail for you. Maybe you're waiting for ideal conditions, support, or even permission to get started. But Zheng started from the bottom of the social ladder and still built an empire. What about you? How much longer will you wait? The knowledge you've gained here isn't just for entertainment, it's meant to spark action. What can you do today, even if it's small, to turn your tide? Write in the comments below, tell me where you are now and where you want to go. And of course, if this video shook you in any way, made you think, or made you want to be more strategic, more daring, then subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell, because here we don't just tell incredible stories, we use them to transform mindsets. And hey, this was just the beginning. I'll see you in the next one.